Okay, so let's say I got interested in this MMR and autism controversy, and I wanted to find out what scientific studies have been done on this topic. So, the first place I would probably go would be to Google Scholar because I like that as a search engine. Google is good. So let's try MMR vaccine autism. All right, so we're going to find some articles on that. And the first article says autism and measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine, no epidemiological evidence for a causal association. Okay, so I'm interested in what they have to say here, so I'm going to click that, and it's connecting. And now it says The Lancet, and this is an online. This is a journal, and it says autism and measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine, no epidemiological evidence for a causal association. And here's our authors: Taylor, Miller, Farrington, so forth. All right, it says we undertook an epidemiological study to investigate whether MMR vaccine may be causally associated with autism. Children with autism born since 1979 were identified from special needs disability registers at special schools in 8 North Thames health districts in the United Kingdom. Information from clinical records was linked to immunization data held on the Child Health Computing System. We look for evidence of a change in a trend in incidence or age at diagnosis associated with the introduction of MMR vaccination to the UK in 1988. Clustering of onsets within defined post-vaccination periods was investigated by the K-series method. Okay, and don't you want to know what they found out? We identified 498 cases of autism, 293 cases the diagnosis could be confirmed, and there was a steady increase in cases by year of birth with no sudden step up or change in the trend line after the introduction of MMR vaccination. No difference in age at diagnosis between cases vaccinated before or after 18 months of age and those never vaccinated. All right, so this sounds like a pretty good study, so I want PDF of this, and when I go to PDF, it wants me to buy it, and or else log in, but I don't belong to this journal and I don't want to buy it. So I need to go to our library, and I'm going to go to databases by title, and I'm going to go to PubMed, and now I'm going to go PubMed, and I want measles, autism, Miller, and Taylor are some of the authors. All right, so now I found it. This is the article, and USF Online has it, and Lancet, and I like to have PDFs of these things. So I grabbed it, now I download it, and then ask me what I want to do, and I say, give me it. All right, now it's loaded, and I can save it as, and the way I do it is Taylor, this is 1999, and it's, I'll save it that way, and I'll go through. And what these guys did is really kind of interesting. So they said, well, you know, if there's an association between MMR and autism, then when you introduce the MMR in 1988, we got to see a jump, a break in these lines that show the incidence of autism. And what you see instead is this nice steady curve. It's probably due to the way that they diagnose or report these cases. But there's no jump there. And they also did a, you can't, so that is really kind of interesting. So if there were an association, you would expect to see a jump in cases of autism, but you don't. The other thing they did was they looked at children who got vaccinated and who didn't get vaccinated, and they found that there's no difference in the incidence of autism for those who were and were not vaccinated. And they had pretty good number of people in each. So both those things suggest that there's no association between MMR vaccine and autism. But now this is just one study, and there, as our guy in the interview noted, there's lots of studies. So what you'd like to see is some kind of a meta-analysis, some kind of a review of all the evidence. Okay. Why are review articles and meta-analyses influential or compelling in psychology and other empirical fields? A, because the author is a respected scientist. B, because the author can choose whatever studies he wants in the review. C, because review articles summarize lots of evidence. D, because that is the current fashion. And I hope that C would jump out at you, because there are lots of published studies and there are flaws in every single one of them, but when we take them all together, the flaws tend to balance out and you tend to get a good summary, a good assessment based on all the evidence or all the data. Okay, so this slide is a sort of summary of the whole chapter, and it has to do with why do I believe things, why do I understand things. This I believe, and one reason or way to believe is based on experience. And the problem is there's no comparison group. So you can't be in two places at one time. You can't be both the experimental and the control group usually. You you kind of have to decide who to marry. You can get one and marry one or the other, but not both. And your experience has confound, so you can't isolate the independent variable. Or you could have intuition, and we saw about thinking the easy way or thinking the way we want. So what's easy to remember, we're biased in the way we collect data because we want to support our own point of view. So it's easy to go wrong here. We can go look at authority, and that may or may not be a good idea. I mean, we're going to do it, and that's part of life. Could be based, if the authority's opinion or conclusion could be based on their research, could be based on their personal experience, could be based on their intuition. This one is a good one. So if the person has done due diligence and gone out and they know the area and they've done the synthesis of the research literature, they're probably right. I mean, that's the way to bet. Similarly, if it's based on research here, we can go through look at our own stuff. So we can look for empirical articles and review articles. And once you get the background, you can do this yourself. And you can trust yourself perhaps a little bit more than somebody else who might be paid by somebody to do this. You can look for chapters in books. You can look at full-length books. I didn't talk about these much, but they're rarer than these, but they can be good. Other sources, so trade books, magazines, wikis, so all this more, it's not so peer-reviewed. You have to take it more with a grain of salt. So lots of ways to know things. Lots of ways to know things. And the research is the way that we in psychology tend to think is the best way to know things. So if we want to know if there's an association, we do a study. If we want to know if there's cause and effect, we do a study. How does peer review help to establish the credibility of a published empirical paper? A, it serves as a check on the acceptability of the paper's methods and conclusions. B, it improves the quality of the writing. C, it ensures that things are not published unless the majority of reviewers vote in favor. D, it serves as a check that the study was properly funded. So credibility, the believability, the force of it, has mostly to do with the methods and conclusions. So the reviewers, the peers, will take a look at what the person did and decide whether it's really up to snuff or not. It may also improve the quality of the writing, and the editor can do whatever he or she wants. So the reviewers, it's not a vote. The reviewers write their opinions. The editor of the journal then considers those opinions and acts. And you can do studies without being funded at all. Okay, so I want to spend just a minute talking about scientific approach versus the more, I guess you could say, artistic. So in the College of Arts and Sciences, you have the science side and you also have the art side. Science side is fundamentally analytic, and you ask questions like, how does this work? What causes what? If we do this, what's the outcome going to be? So in science, a question might be, why do dogs come in such different shapes and sizes? How can it be that they're all dogs, but you got really big ones and really little ones? How does that work? On the other side, on the artistic side, you've got interpretation. So instead of how does it work, you ask, what is its significance or its meaning? What's the point? What's the value? So not sort of how to build it, but what does it mean, or why should you? In art and literature, instead of saying, why do dogs come in such different shapes and sizes, you're much more likely to say something like, what does it mean to have a dog as a pet? So what's the nature of the relationship between a dog and a person? Why do we love them? How do they fit into our families? The interpretation, the meaning of things versus the analysis and the cause and effect relations. So both these things, I submit to you, are important parts of modern life and important parts of your college experience. And I'll get off my soapbox.